Hello, my spooky friends. I am Liv, the horror whore, and welcome to my very first YouTube channel movie review. So today we are going to talk about Midsommar. What in the actual hell is this movie? Like, it was so weird. It was so weird. I went to go see it in theaters with my brother, who is also a super big horror fan. And I was really excited because I know that the director was the same person who did Hereditary, which was a conversation for another day. I absolutely loved Hereditary. I thought Hereditary was by far the best movie of the year, best horror movie of the year. It was excellent. So I was really excited to see Midsommar and see everything that it had to offer. So basically a little bit about Midsommar if you don't know what it's about. There's this girl, Dani, and she suffers a family tragedy, and she decides to go with her boyfriend and his friends who are all grad students, and one of them is doing their dissertation. One of them is doing their dissertation on the Midsommar traditions overseas in Europe or whatever. So they go to a commune in Sweden, which is one of their other doctorate candidates' friends' hometown, and a bunch of crazy stuff happens. So here's the spoiler-free discussion, and when we get into spoilers, I will let everyone know so they can click off if they haven't seen the movie. So first of all, this movie received a wide release, meaning it went to theaters. It wasn't a festival film. It wasn't, released in theaters for a couple of days. It wasn't a special event. It was just a wide release. And it was rated R. I hate censorship. I'm totally down for movies showing everything. But how did this movie get an R rating? Like, it's pretty shocking at times. I was pretty surprised between the gore and the nudity, and it was just, I was surprised that it got an R rating. I know that a special edition cut came out that's supposed to be unrated, I believe. Maybe, I'm pretty sure it was an unrated release that had a few more scenes in it that didn't pass the R rating. But still, it was pretty big stretch for it to get an R rating. I'm glad it did because it made it a lot more accessible to a lot of people. But it was interesting. I was quite surprised that occurred. So Ari Aster, I don't know. Anyway, he came out with Hereditary, and I'm not going to do a comparison between the two because it's just like comparing Jordan Peele's Get Out and Us. I mean, it just doesn't really make sense just because they did the same thing. But I was kind of expecting some, because I had such high expectations for Midsommar because of Hereditary, which was probably my fault. I was let down when I watched Midsommar in theaters. Hereditary was a beautiful, dark, very dark film. And while Midsommar had a lot of the same themes, it took place primarily completely during the day. It was so bright. It was so flowery. I craved some darkness. And like any scenes that happened tonight, I was like, oh yes, finally, like a break from my eyes. It was too bright. But then again, the movie is about Midsommar and Midsommar festival traditions, all of that. So it makes sense. Part of my reason that I left theaters not liking Midsommar was because it was too bright. So if you like a flowery, beautiful movie, then you'll like Midsommar. Go for it. Secondly, Ari Aster came out of nowhere, pretty much. He dropped Hereditary. He dropped Midsommar. Both of those movies were so weird. I left the theater like, what? In a good way for both movies. And I say that he came out of nowhere, but do y'all remember that really, really, really weird thing? It was like a short that went viral on Facebook. I mean, everyone was talking about it, called Meet the Johnsons. So Meet the Johnsons was a very small, short film. I think it was like 30 minutes, maybe even less. It's been a while since I watched it. And it was about this family, and it was a black family, which was what was so funny, because everyone was like, yo, this is some white people shit. It was like so funny to see like the dynamics with that. But it was a black family, and the son, the adult son, was raping the father. And it's like, din din. It was just so bizarre. It wasn't necessarily like horror, but you watched it and everyone was like, what is this? And he brings those same feelings and shock factor and elements to his movies, at least Hereditary and Midsommar. He was involved in one other film that I haven't seen. But he's really just kind of basically coming out of nowhere and like killing the game, leaving audiences just with their mouths open like, I don't know what I just saw. So we talked about how Midsommar was super bright and took place primarily in the daytime. And I ended up just rewatching it a few days ago with my family. And at the end, I was actually pretty surprised because all of them were like, that wasn't a horror movie. I was like not scared. It wasn't a horror movie. It was just a weird kind of like drama thing. And I'm going to say no, it definitely is a horror movie for sure. Just because something takes place during the day and just because it's bright and it's not like dark and gritty or whatever, it's still a horror movie. I would be interested to see, comment below if you think that Midsommar was a horror movie or not. It definitely has the horror criteria. For me, it checks off a lot of the boxes. Just because it doesn't follow the script, which neither did Hereditary. Hereditary was not your cliche, slasher film or haunting film. It was definitely just different, but it was a horror movie and no one argued about it. And I wonder if that's because it was dark and a lot of the elements were at night or, in a dark house or whatever. Whereas this is like in a big open flowery field. So my opinion is it's definitely still a horror movie. Let me know what yours is. I'd be curious to know. So the main character, Danny, which is played by Florence Pugh. Oh my God, she got on my nerves. She was so annoying. That was another thing that irritated me. But at the same time, her acting performance in this film was amazing. She did such a great job with the emotions, and all of the acting in this film was great. And the fact that she did get on my nerves and it irritated me watching means that she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. She did a good job. Probably not the best reason why she got on my nerves. Her, like, how she portrayed her emotions, she was just like over the top. But she definitely was kind of deserving of it, I guess. One of my main issues when I watch horror movies is like, all this stuff happens, bam, 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 people are getting killed, and this happened, and you suffered this tragedy, and they just seem like fine. Like, I don't think it's the appropriate emotional response in most horror movies. Like Nightmare on Elm Street is a perfect example. Nancy and her emotional capacity, like her best friend died, her boyfriend died, all this stuff is happening, and she's just like, whatever. You get the complete opposite in this film. She's just like wailing with emotion. The emotion is so raw in this movie. And I think that's probably why it's uncomfortable, because we're like used to kind of getting sheltered with how actors portray their emotions in horror films specifically. But this one definitely, you felt all of the raw emotion, which takes me to my second point. The dynamics in this movie between Danny and Christian, who is her boyfriend, and even Christian and his friends, and Danny and his friends. Oh my God, it is so realistic. Like, they're kind of got like, this rocky relationship, Danny and Christian, and they're together, but they want to, like, he wanted to break up with her, but then this, tragedy happened, so he just kind of stuck with her and is inviting her to things that she doesn't want to go to, he doesn't want her to come to, and it's just like that monotonous feeling that so many people feel in their relationships, and it was so awkward and almost cringy to watch because it was so well done. It was just great. And then, like, there's this one scene where he's like, hey, Christian is like telling his doctorate friends, they're all in this program or whatever. I think it's the philosophy department. And he's just like, hey, I told Danny she could come to Sweden with us, but she's not going to come. But just so y'all know, you're all okay with it. And she thinks she's coming, but she's not going to come. And they're just like, what? Like, what's going on? And it just feels so realistic. Like, I feel like I've walked into a room where, everyone's just been like prepared and they're faking that they're okay with something, or, whatever. It's just so raw and just makes so much sense. It makes the movie feel so real in a situation where, things are pretty far-fetched. And I think that gives the whole story a genuine feel to it, and definitely helps it adapt a lot better. Okay, we're going to get into some specifics here. So if you haven't seen the movie, fast forward to the end where I talk about a couple little loose ends I'm going to tie up. But if you have seen the movie, or if you want to know what I'm going to talk about, stay tuned. So when I went to the theaters to see this movie, it starts off pretty dark because it starts off in America, in Danny's home. It shows kind of the relationship between Danny and Christian and what they're kind of going for. It kind of spells it all out for you. And she's got this sister that has some sort of disorder, and she's dealt with her before, sending ominous text messages and, different weird stuff. And basically she gets this message from her sister saying, like, it's all over, I'm taking mom and dad with me, goodbye, something like that. And so she's all freaking out, all weird about everything. And Christian's like, look, this is just your sister wanting attention, whatever. And so I'm sucked into the movie because I'm like, oh, it's pretty dark at that point. And, you just feel that they're doomed at that point, just from how the situation has been set up. And yeah, they are doomed. She finds out that her sister has killed her parents and committed suicide with carbon monoxide poisoning. And just when they get to that point, they cut to that scene, it's just, there's no dialogue and it's all in slow motion. And the score, oh my God, the score, it's just like, it's similar to Hereditary's score, and then it's just like pounding and like so scary sounding, and it just so unsettling. And it's just like the camera's moving along with the firefighters, showing them go up the stairs, showing the parents dead in the bed. And then it shows the sister who has literally like made some sort of creation where she's like has this long hose that's connected directly to the garage, and she's got like a gas mask on, and she's just like all like the makeup for this movie was just great. There was just like veining, and it was just like, oh, it was so dark in that scene. And I was just like, the score was so pounding, and then it just cuts to Danny just wailing, screaming, crying on the phone with Christian, and like laying in Christian's lap, just like literally she can't handle what she can't process it. And I'm just like, oh yes, I'm so here for this movie. I'm ready. Like, it's gonna be great. Then it cuts to like, kind of the aftermath several months later, where she's just like battling with her depression. And, she finds out that she is going to go to Sweden with Christian and his buddies and their fellow grad student who has the hometown in Sweden. So that's like their whole connection with this. And then it's like, you know, they're traveling to Sweden, and I'm just like, okay, it's a little drawn out at that point. I think the whole movie is captivating, but it's a 2.5 hour long movie, and I think some of the stuff in between was a little bit drawn out. But they get to Sweden, and like, it's so funny because there's like this whole movie is so trippy, which we'll get into, but there's this one scene when they're driving on the road before they get to the commune, and like the whole camera flips upside down, so the camera, or like the car is driving what looks like, you know, on the ceiling basically. And I was watching the movie with my sister-in-law, and she was like, this is stupid. And it was so funny because she didn't know what she was in store for quite yet. And so I don't think that she understood, like, this movie is already trying to mess with your mind. And by doing, like, that was a very obvious transition, obviously. By doing that, they're just kind of, like, I think, setting you up for the road that you're about to take, which is, like, as soon as they get to the commune, they all take mushrooms. And then they cut to the scene where, like, okay, they take the mushrooms and everything, which, why she thought it was a good idea to take mushrooms or any sort of drug during her state, besides psychiatric drugs, is beyond me. I mean, she did it basically to not be a buzzkill. And so her boyfriend would be included and all that. But yeah, talk about a bad trip. Like, she's still suffering the loss of her entire family, and she's in this dead-end relationship that she's desperately trying to preserve, and she don't take mushrooms when you're in this type of situation, but she did. And after they all take the mushrooms, it cuts to the scene, and they're all just like laying on the grass, and they're like looking up, and they're like, what is going on? And they've got the Eyebrows dude, Bandersnatch, and We Are the Millers. He's the comedic relief, which, thank you. I'm so glad that they made this kid the comedic relief and not the black dude. Like, that is so frustrating. I'm all for, like, roles in horror movies, but, like, come on, we've moved past that. So that was a relief that they've got, you know, this just random white dude puffing on a vape the entire time. And he's definitely the comedic relief, but it's not forced. You can tell that, like, that's just kind of his personality. And it's not just, like, random stupid jokes, which, like, I feel like they try to do in a lot of modern horror movies because they're trying to, like, you know, keep the audience interested with that comedic relief. He provided a necessary and appropriate comedic relief. And I enjoyed that aspect of it for sure. He was definitely one of the highlights of the movie. He was pretty funny. So anyway, they're all like super high, and throughout the movie, they're consuming, you know, different teas and different things that have these sort of drugs, hallucinogenic drugs. And throughout the movie, you can see, like, people's eyes kind of edited weird. You can see, like, flowers moving and getting bigger and smaller. The trees, the background, all of the greenery is moving in a way that isn't normal with the wind. And this is seen throughout the entire duration of them being on this commune in Sweden. So it's definitely, like, goes beyond just like, okay, they're high and they're showing their trip. It's just like you're almost tripping with the movie, which I like and I don't like. I don't like it because it almost makes it feel like everything that's happening isn't happening, which I don't know if that was actually the goal, because then it takes away that, like, oh snap, these American kids are in a different country. They don't have any way out. They're stuck here. It's scary. It kind of takes that away, and it's just like, is this really happening? And I don't know. To me, I don't care for that part as much. I could have done without the drug aspect of it. And a lot of people who have seen the movie have been like, yeah, I feel like this would be a great movie to watch on drugs. I don't really care for that. I think that you should be able to enjoy a movie in its best state in your normal state. But I don't know. It's a pretty trippy movie, and they definitely try to bring you in for the ride. But to me, that kind of takes away. I'm like, so is this happening, or is this her depressed mind, kind of coming up with all of this, and because she's depressed and she's high, and all of her reality is completely altered at this point. So I don't know, it just kind of takes away a little bit for me. So I talked about this movie kind of moving a little bit slow at the parts before Sweden, and when they get to Sweden, it still moves slow. It's a slow burn for sure. Things happen, but it's just like drawn out and a lot in between. Now, I don't mind that so much because it's building the suspense. Well, I say that. One of the biggest issues I had with this movie when I left the theaters, now I much more enjoyed it the second time I watched it at home. But when I left the theaters, I was like, nothing happened. Like, what happened? We knew everything that was going to happen. And I used the incorrect word, and I said it was predictable when I left the theater, but it wasn't predictable. It set you all, if you watch the movie, you know what's going to happen. Like, before anything happens. They literally spell it out for you. Yeah, there's some symbolism, foreshadowing a bit, like, for whatever reason, I believe it's Danny's room. It might be Christian's room. Anyway, their home back in America has this picture hanging up over the bed, and it's a bear. Well, Christian, spoiler alert, gets burned in a bear carcass at the end of the movie. And so that was cool to catch. I didn't catch that the first time. I caught it the second time. But like, they literally say everything that's going to happen. There's this board when they're like kind of touring the commune. There's like this board of like ancient artwork or whatever, and it's like supposed to be like the love spell, and it's like putting period blood in their drink, putting pubic hair in their food, and putting some sort of like rune thing that she carves like under the bed or whatever. And that's exactly what happens. So, later in the movie. So it's like, once you saw that, you kind of can expect. And then where they're staying in the commune, there's beautiful artwork that looks almost like with a Renaissance vibe to it. All this different artwork and everything. And it spells, there's like a bear on fire in it. And there's, all the stuff that happens pretty much occurs throughout the movie in different artwork, and even mentioning it sometimes. So it's not that it's predictable. It's they're kind of setting you up for the ride. And when I first saw that, I didn't care for that much, because I always like to kind of figure a movie out. This one, there wasn't much to figure out, but it was still so shocking. So the fact that they were able to tell you what's going to happen and make it still so shocking was really, I think, well done on their part. Let's talk about the gore for a minute. This isn't what I would say a gory movie, but there is some scenes in the movie in particular that are like, whoa. Obviously the first, like, things are kind of weird. I mean, I don't know if it's like a cultural thing, but like, people are kind of weird there already, and it's like, can you chalk it up to cultural differences? I mean, they're literally living on a commune, in the middle of a field. So, they have all these ancient traditions and stuff. So you can kind of chalk it up to like them just being different, and that's kind of like the weirdness and disconnect you feel. But then things do kind of start getting like, wait, that was kind of weird, right? And the first thing that definitely solidifies that something is kind of going wrong is in their traditions, people at the age of 72 are at the end of their life cycle and have to kill themselves. And so they jump off this cliff. And if you don't die from jumping off the cliff, they beat your head in with a giant mallet while everyone watches. And the special effects for this scene were so good, so amazing. Like, their whole, like, old dude's face just completely goes, like, oh my god, it was so good. Like, I absolutely loved it. And then they show them like cremating them later, and they like, you know, just like kind of out of nowhere, just bam, zoom in on like just completely, their face is gone. I mean, it's just completely battered. And it was just so well done. And then there's another scene where some other two kids from England are also visiting the commune as guests or sacrifices. And like, they put flowers in his eyes and string him up with his lungs on the backside of him, and like, just beautiful, beautiful horror imagery. I just absolutely loved it. Like, one thing that they say is like, the Midsommar Festival is like, focuses a lot on pageantry, you know, and it's, you know, all done up with flowers, and you can tell that everything that they're wearing is hand embroidered, and everything is made special for this Midsommar celebration. And it's just like, it's just very well done. The costuming and everything, all the flowers, and, you know, the pageantry of it. And so I love the fact that they put flowers in his eye sockets for his death. That was like pretty cool. And then like, there's another scene where, you know, the other kid gets killed, and they like carve his face off and put it like, I don't know, it's like a Leatherface type of deal, but it was really creepy and unsettling looking, and it was really well done. So I love the way that this movie was filmed. The costuming, the makeup, special effects, everything was really, really a beautiful movie. I mean, if you take out all of the actors and all of the story, dialogue, everything, and just like watch the movie, it's so pretty. The cinematography and everything is just, it's just really, really pretty. So you have that. At least it's visually stunning, whether you enjoy the film or not. And then the acting is also fantastic. So whether you enjoy the storyline, or, you know, you think it's predictable or not, or, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, it is a very well done movie. Acting is good, the cinematography is good, it's thought out, it's not rushed, maybe to a fault, a little bit drawn out, but it's definitely, it's worth the watch for sure. Another point that I want to talk about is the fact that it's almost made out that like, these commune people, they're literally sacrificing people. They have this specific lifestyle where, you know, at 72, you have to commit suicide, and, you know, all the children are raised like typical commune stuff, but, you know, and then they sacrifice, have this May Queen, and they're all on drugs the whole time, and do the love spells, all this weird stuff. But it almost makes you feel like when they're not having their solstice festival, they're like normal people. And I think a big part of that is you have Pele, who was back in America with this group as a grad student. And this is his family's commune. And he is never made out to be the bad guy, even though he literally brought these people here. He brought his friends from America to be sacrificed, pretty much. And basically entrap Danny to where she has to stay there, what I have to assume is for the rest of her life, or be killed. He's never made out to be a bad guy. He's just like pretty normal the whole time. And even after like some crazy stuff goes down, and he's just so warm and sweet, and it's not like manipulative. It's just like, it's normal for him. Like, all of the things that are happening that the Americans and the British kids were freaking out about, it's just like, no, this is what we respect in our life. And one of the things that I think he mentions is, you know, or maybe it was Christian who said it, was like, you know, when our people get old, we throw them in a nursing home, and that's probably quite disturbing to the people of this culture. Instead, they'd rather give the elderly their life back into the earth so they can bless the crops and all that stuff. And it just makes you think like, okay, well, maybe it's a cultural difference, a traditional thing. Like, it's weird, but is it the worst thing ever? So it almost, like, the whole time, because the people are so warm and friendly, all the, like, beautiful blonde Swedish girls with these bright big blue eyes, they're like, they're like, oh, come here. And, they're so helpful and nice. And it's like, these are normal people. They just have some abnormal traditions. And who are we as Americans to disrespect their culture? So you get a sense of, like, safety almost. And then, like, everyone freaking dies, including people of their own culture that are willing to sacrifice themselves for the future of their community. And it's just a weird and unsettling film for sure. I think the biggest and most unsettling aspect of it is actually not the killing and the gore, and how the people are killed. It's that Christian goes in and impregnates this Swedish chick who put the love spell on him while he's high, like, beyond belief. And he gets, like, the mother's approval, and she, like, says, like, you will be an ideal mate. And he's like, okay. So he goes in and he's like, all right, I'm gonna, like, get butt naked, which they show full frontal, everything, and impregnate this girl while he's obviously still with Danny. And Danny's off doing her May Queen stuff. And there's, like, this whole room of, like, a variety of women at different ages, and they're all butt naked, and they're just, like, sitting around, like, standing in a circle, like, whatever, doing this while he's, like, impregnating this girl. And he's just like, what the heck is going on? You can see his face is just like, he's totally disconnected from what's actually happening. And then I think at that point is when the movie starts to get, everything up to that point I could see happening in a way. Like, I could see going to a commune and, like, experiencing what's going on. But then, like, at this point, it's just like, all right, it just gets a little bit much. Like, the girl is moaning or whatever in pleasure, and everyone just starts moaning, like, mimicking the sounds. And it's just like, what? And then same thing with Danny. She's off doing the May Queen stuff. She catches Christian. She's freaking out. She's like, wailing, like, uncontrollably. And all these little Swedish girls are mimicking her emotion and wailing. And it's just like, before you know it, they're all breathing in cadence and screaming in cadence. And it's just like, would that be a thing? I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit much for these people to be seemingly normal to a degree, and then just, like, I don't know. It's weird. Another thing that I thought was wasted and weird was the child who was born of inbred. So he's, like, really deformed, and he's the one that is supposed to interpret the holy text, and literally he's just scribbling in a circle. He was kind of a wasted character. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. He was just kind of, like, mentioned, and then kind of, like, in a couple scenes where he's just, like, scribbling, and then that was it. So, I mean, I guess his purpose was to serve that, like, yeah, they do purposeful inbreeding, which is super wrong. And, like, they believe that the inbreeding, it, like, clears the sight or whatever, and you're able to, like, hear the holy text or something more. And so I guess, like, at that point in the movie, when we find that out, like, it's important for us to know that, like, okay, these people are not just a cultural difference at that point. But I wish they would have done a little bit more. So let's talk about Florence Pugh for a second. She plays Danny, and she ends up being their May Queen because she basically dances until everyone else drops because they're all super freaking high. And she becomes their May Queen. And in the first for the first time in that entire film, she seems to be like genuinely happy. She, I think, kind of forgot about everything that's going on around her because she's polite throughout the whole movie, but very concerned about what's going on. You know, she wants to leave. She doesn't think things are sitting right with her, but she's polite, and definitely you can see that she's making an effort not to be disrespectful to these, you know, people who are a different culture of her. And she is just like, but even though she smiles and she's polite, she just never seems like she's happy at all. But when she becomes the May Queen and everyone just wraps her in these flowers and carries her off, and she seems happy for a second, and then she kind of gets back down to reality and is like, wait, you know, can Christian come with me? Where are you taking me? And then she sees that she's just going to bless the crops and stuff, and she seems to kind of, you know, cheer back up and everything. And then obviously she finds out that everyone is being sacrificed, and Christian has impregnated some chick, and he's gonna be burned in a bear suit. He's just like sitting there like completely paralyzed, and you know, things have gotten pretty real for her at this point. She's understanding that she's probably not getting out of this. And she's just like wailing and crying while they're burning Christian and all the other sacrifices and bodies in this sacred temple. And which is cool. The sacred temple is like just this yellow triangle in the middle of like this, all these like very traditional looking cabins and stuff. So that was kind of a cool like focal point. Like, you know that something's gonna happen there for sure. And anyway, they all are like burning, and she's like going through her like emotional freak out where she's like just sobbing uncontrollably, and then she just is sitting and she's just frowning, just like just frowning, and that frown slowly becomes to the most genuine happy smile in one shot. And I love that scene because you are really understanding that like Christian was holding her back. He was making her feel horrible. Not that she's happy that he's dead, but she has finally found almost like a sense of security, like she's being held, which is something that Pele says in the movie. And it's almost like she can almost forget about everything that's ever happened and live in this present moment, and maybe even become a part of this culture and stuff. And it was just really interesting the way that it ended. When I watched the movie with my family, my sister-in-law, like when Danny is just sitting there smiling, wrapped in all the flowers after everyone has died, she's like, wow, it better not end. And then of course it cuts straight to the credits. So that was kind of funny because it was like, you know, you almost like you want more explanation, but I'm so glad they didn't give it. We don't need that. We can put the pieces, and you know, that's what fan theories are about. You can kind of guess what will happen and everything, but it was a crazy movie for sure. And my dad watched it. I didn't watch it with him. He watched it with my brother, and he said he had nightmares for weeks. Everyone else was like, no, this isn't a horror movie. You can't have nightmares about it. It is a horror movie to me. It definitely has a lot of elements. I mean, it's scary. Now, I have not seen The Wicker Man. I had several people tell me that this movie was similar to The Wicker Man. I don't know really what that is, so let me know in the comments if you think that this movie was like The Wicker Man, if it was a ripoff or it just kind of borrowed some plot points or whatever. Let me know. I'll get around to watching The Wicker Man eventually. I heard it wasn't really that great of a movie, but I would definitely be interested in watching it just so I could see kind of how it talks up. But even if you haven't seen The Wicker Man, if you've seen any sort of ritualistic cult type of movie, you can kind of expect similar things, but done in such a really good way. Despite a couple of things, I didn't feel like everything was, like, nothing was weird just to be weird, except for maybe towards the end. Everything seemed like it was for a purpose, you know? And I appreciated that, because there are so many, like, weird cult movies or whatever that they'll just, like, throw in some stuff that like never really would occur. So I did appreciate that. Like I said, overall, the movie did feel genuine. For some reason, when I watched it in theaters, I came out hating it. I think that was because I compared Hereditary and Midsommar, and I do believe that Hereditary is a far better movie. But Midsommar gets 1 and like a half thumbs up from this local boogeyman. Let me know what you thought about the movie. And if you're interested in seeing more of my makeup that is in the thumbnail, that was my Midsommar look, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever. All my info is down below. And leave me a comment. Tell me how you like this movie. This is my very first very first YouTube film review. So let me know what you'd like to see more of, if you enjoyed this, what I could do differently. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.